Hello, everybody. How's it going? Good to see you here. I took my glasses off, and then somebody's probably I'm gonna guess John might actually put up the roll call here in just a second, or John might not be here. In which case, there's John. He of course starts off the roll call because he's the first one here as far as he's concerned. Then there's Matthew, Brian, Roger, Frank, Bill, Chuck, Hank, Donna. A little sunshine next to Donna. Oh, oh. There's Gary, Eugene, Jeff, Webb, and Andrew. I already hit record. Thank you, Roger. I appreciate that. I already hit record. Did that before I even got here. So, Bully and Ken. Yes, Webb says I'm here, which I guess means I am. Hang on a second. Light's really bright. Oops. There we go. That'll mess us up. What do you say we do a show? Hold on, let me put myself on Do Not Disturb. Now, what do you say we do a show? Findings in the feed and another round of Friday's game. It is Tuesday, the 9th of February, 2021, and this is macOS Can Live. I feel like my camera's off. Not off, because I can see me, but I feel like my camera's off. Whatever. And the lights are too bright, but whatever. But whatever. Hi, I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you into another edition of macOS Can Live, a thing we do Monday through Friday, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, where we just, kind of get together and I kick around some ideas around some Apple stuff. And then after the show, we all talk about them and hopefully I get some feedback. And then that feeds into the next day's show. And then pretty soon we're doing shows upon shows upon shows, which I also do. Second half of the show, I said we're going to play another round of Friday's game. We did a thing here Friday about what's been like, I'll try to explain in the second half of the show. Basically, if you heard last Friday's macOS Can Live, you heard me sort of kick around some of the stuff that's happened in Apple over the past 15 years. That has turned into a thing that I've been asking other people about, and that for some reason has prompted me to do that again, but I promise it'll be different. Plus, I want you to answer these questions as well. That'll be second half of today's show. First half of today's show, though, I know I forgot to do something. I don't have my notes up. Give me just a second, though. And this will also figure into the second part of the show. Kind of amazing, if you ask me. First part of the show, I had started to call it lunacy in the news feed. And then I realized that's a tiny bit judgmental, to call it lunacy. That's not really fair. Part of it, though, is dealing with my own lunacy. We talked here yesterday about how pedantic I can be, about how I need somebody to say point blank that something is true for me to believe it's true, or I need them to say point blank that it's not for me to believe that it's not. Inferences are kind of interesting. The problem is we get stuck in them, and then, we're lost in a way. So yesterday, I believe it was Bloomberg said that Hyundai and Kia had put out some sort of regulatory finding, or filing rather, and it didn't mention Apple. What it actually said was that they were in talks with lots of companies. And yet Bloomberg and these other organizations were saying, well, that means they're not talking to Apple. And I was chasing my tail because I could not find a place where anybody had said that they had said, we're not talking to Apple. Gary was kind enough to write to me and say, here's a news report where somebody said that. But again, they didn't have a quote. They didn't have anything specifically that said that they're saying, not going to happen. Finally, the good people at CNBC came through for me. They have a quote. Hyundai Motor is getting requests from multiple companies for cooperation in joint development of autonomous electric vehicles, but nothing has been decided since its early stage, the company said, according to a CNBC translation of regulatory filing. Hyundai Motor is not in talks with Apple on autonomous vehicle development, it added. And now I can rest. That and Kia said the same thing. Said they were in talks with multiple companies. Kia Motors also said it was not in talks with Apple, which means, hey, barn doors open. Everybody's back in the whole thing. JP Morgan now says it should be Renault. Renault should do that. And if anybody tells me it's actually pronounced Renault, my head might explode all over the computer. JP Morgan says Renault would be a good one. They already have an alliance with Nissan, with the two being strategic partners since 1999 and controlling 10 major brands. According to the note by the JP Morgan analyst, this theoretically makes Renault a partner that may be more willing to work with Apple than Hyundai, which agonized over the negotiations. You remember that story from a little over a week ago, where executives inside Hyundai were saying to be said to be agonizing because Apple wants to be the boss, Hyundai wants to be the boss, Hyundai doesn't want to be Foxconn, for crying out loud. By the way, Foxconn could also do this. There was a report a week or so ago, maybe two now, that they were upping their ability to make cars. We're a few years out from there being able to put anything off the assembly line onto the street. But theoretically, we're a few years out from Apple being able to do that too. So, hey, maybe Apple doesn't need a partner. Maybe they need a contract manufacturer, like Foxconn. There's another piece from Apple Insider that says ministers of parliament in the UK are urging Apple to produce the rumored Apple car in that country. My initial thought was that's cute and it's never going to happen. Although, in fairness, the piece does go on to say that the MPs are trying to convince the UK to ask Apple to use the country as one of its bases of manufacturing for the self-driving car, which does make sense. I mean, if Apple wants to sell any in the UK, you can see them building some in the UK if they can afford to. It'd be a great way to sort of spread around manufacturing. Same kind of thing that they're doing, trying to get the iPads and iPhones out of China, have them developed other places as well. It's hard to see Apple going anywhere but, well, either Asia or the US. I could see them producing both in Asia and the US, China specifically, although maybe someplace else in China, maybe someplace else in the Asia Pacific. But it's really hard to see Apple not building at least some of the cars here in the States. Because it's not like we don't know how to build cars in the States. Maybe we don't know how to build Apple cars, but that's because there is no Apple car. We know how to build Tesla. It's hard to imagine Apple wouldn't build at least some of them here. See also, though, tons of other countries. Everybody's going to want a piece of that, right? As long as it's not being made anywhere, it could be made anywhere. So that'll probably continue. In the meantime, Apple's self-driving aims are chugging right along. A piece from Mac Rumors says, over the course of 2020, vehicles equipped with Apple's self-driving technology traveled a total of 18,805 miles in California, up from 7,544 miles traveled in 2014, or 2019, rather. I should wear my glasses, but I'm too vain. That's cool, because who needs to go more than 18,000 miles? It sounds like this thing is ready. Get it out there today. That's one of the bits. Not really lunacy. That just kind of calms me down, actually. The fact that we've heard from CNBC that that Hyundai and Kia have absolutely said now, because I really honestly thought we were going to do. I thought we were going to just chase that back and forth, where Hyundai did say initially they were part of the talks, and then they sort of backed off. They didn't say they weren't part of it, but they didn't say they were anymore. And then the next thing that came out said the same thing. They didn't say they weren't, but they didn't say they were. I am calmed now by the fact that somebody says they said. Of course, Apple said once it didn't know anything about phones. And who would want to watch video on an iPod? So things are only true until they're not, but at least there is a statement we can stand behind at this point. Speaking of phones, there are reports from Counterpoint Research that iPhone 12 mini only accounted for 5% of iPhone sales. And it's kind of funny because there are lots of headlines out there right now with a bit of hand-wringing, I would say. This proves that we don't want small phones. iPhone 12 mini is a failure, things like that. And it's kind of funny to me because who knows that everybody is not into a teeny tiny phone? It's Apple. That's why they made 4 sizes, knowing that some people would go for the tiny one, and we don't know what the builds are. We don't know how many Apple thought they were gonna sell of the mini versus the, regular iPhone 12 versus the 12 Pro versus the 12 Pro Max. It's, maddening, kind of. There's the lunacy in the news feed. Proof positive that this thing stinks and that it's a failure. Well, we knew it wasn't gonna be for everybody. Apple knew it wasn't gonna be for everybody, hence Apple making, lots of different sizes of phones and lots of different price points as well. This was the one that originally made me wanna say lunacy, and I realized I had to kinda check myself because it's not a thing that I know a lot about or understand. A couple of weeks ago on In a Few Minutes, I talked to Brian Chaffin about cryptocurrency, or really Brian Chaffin talked to me about cryptocurrency because it's not my bag, it's not my thing, it's not a thing I followed. RBC has a new analyst following Apple. I don't remember, Robert Mueller, yeah, was their last analyst following Apple. RBC's last analyst following Apple was Robert Mueller. Now it's a guy named Mitch Steves. Steves, who sounds like a sports guy, a sportscaster, I mean. Mitch Steves, though, is actually covering Apple for RBC, and he's really excited about the possibility that Apple might get into cryptocurrency. Not its own, but making Apple Wallet a place where people could trade cryptocurrency. You could buy and sell, which I think means trade. He makes some fairly compelling ideas or cases for how much money there is in it for Apple. He likes the fact that Apple's security would make it a more secure environment to do that. He likes the idea that we already trust Apple as far as payments between Apple Card and Apple Pay and Apple Wallet and all that stuff. Sounds crazy to me, but that's because cryptocurrency sounds crazy to me. I'm not a crypto guy. I'm not somebody who follows that closely at all. The one thing I found myself wondering about is what is the last thing Apple got into that was inaccessible to almost everybody? Apple does Apple TV Plus. Well, we understand TV. Apple does Apple Music. We understand music. Apple does an iPad. Well, an iPad's just a bigger iPhone back when it first came out. And Apple does iPhone. That was kind of mind blowing, and yet it was also really basic. You look at the thing, you put your finger on the thing, other stuff comes up. I mean, it was all stuff that we understood. Cryptocurrency doesn't strike me as the most accessible thing, but maybe Apple makes it more accessible. There doesn't seem to be anything indicating that Apple is really thinking about this. This could just be Mitch Steves on sports coming out and saying, "Hey, here's an idea. Here's something Apple could do." I mean, this might just be his showing up and saying, "Here's the kind of thinker I am." He did also up his price target on Apple shares. They had been at 154. His price target, now that he's taken over, he's got Apple at 171, which is pretty close to a street high. Daniel Ive still has a street high of 175. It's got an outperform rating as well. Is that lunacy? I don't know because crypto is not my thing. So I had to check myself on that. And that's why I changed the whole thing to findings in the feed rather than crazy people talking. Right. We're going to play last Friday's game in a different way in just a moment. First, though, I'm going to let you know about another show that I do. The show is called In a Few Minutes. And In a Few Minutes is actually playing this game this week. Got a few different guests on. Let's see. Jeff Gamet was on today. Dave Hamilton will be on tomorrow. Shelley Brisbane, Parallels host Shelley Brisbane, will be on Thursday. And then the after shows, Mike Rose will wrap up the week on Friday. And I'm asking them, again, starting from the joke that I started with last Friday, how in 2006, when macOS 10 started, it seemed obvious that eventually we would be talking about a new Peanuts series being produced by Apple. The questions that I am putting to everybody this week, and I want to put this question to you as well. Questions I'm putting to everybody this week: what has wowed you over the past 15 years? What has surprised you over the last 15 years? And then take me 15 years out. What do we have from Apple? And it doesn't have to be like, this is definitely where Apple is going. Quite the contrary. If you've got some crazy idea, and I don't, not crazy, but if you've got some idea that doesn't seem a natural thing right now, but it seems like a natural thing to you, what do you think that's going to be? And the reason I'm being so precise on this description is because, first of all, I'm about to answer those questions. Second, those are the questions being answered this week on In a Few Minutes. But third, I want those answers from you. I would love for this to be Friday's edition of macOS Can Live. So if you got a pen and paper, and I'll remind you about this over the next couple of days. If you got a pen or paper, these are the questions I would love for you to answer. Over the last 15 years, so that's since 2006, what has wowed you about Apple? What has surprised you that Apple has done? And what do you want to see in the next 15 years? So the way you get that to me is info@macoscan.com, info, info@macoscan.com. And you can listen to other people's answers as well. The show is called In a Few Minutes. Look for that and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. I will say I have only recorded 2 of those 4 shows, and they have been fascinating. And it's so fascinating that it makes me want to answer the question as well. I think I've been pretty decent so far anyway about just letting them answer their question. Although Dave Hamilton and I do get into a discussion tomorrow about the state of podcasting and good versus bad that's come from Apple on that. I don't want to say versus bad. You'll hear it, you'll like it, you'll agree, you'll disagree, whatever. And feel free to send feedback as well. I wanted to answer those questions, though, partly because I just had that discussion with Dave about an hour and a half ago, getting ready for tomorrow's show. What has wowed me? I find myself continually amazed by how pervasive and powerful all of this stuff is. iCloud has a lot of problems. I don't know why, if I try to take one of the instances of a friend's birthday out of my calendar, they all disappear. I've got birthdays in my calendar that are repeated 8 or 9 times. But if I go to erase one of them, suddenly it's all gone. And it's all on the same day. It fills the day, and yet it's all gone. Stuff like that is kind of annoying. At the same time, if I'm away from my phone, I can look at my watch and find out what's on my calendar. If I'm sitting in front of my iPad, I can do that. If I'm in front of my computer, I can do that. And of course, on my phone as well. If I led a busy life, theoretically, I would be able to turn to my HomePod or my HomePod Mini and say, hey, what's on my calendar for today, person who lives inside my HomePod or HomePod Mini? And it would be able to answer me. What is that called? Ambient computing. Ambient computing, where we're just sort of like always in our data. Where this really always impresses me is when I'm sitting at the dining room table and remember that I wanted to print something, and I can go onto my phone, find the what do you call it? Find the document I'm trying to print, hit print, and it prints in the office upstairs from a device that I've never opened that document on before to a device that's nowhere near me, and that just happens. Now, I know that's not all Apple, that's also Wi-Fi and all that stuff, but I'm just amazed by how pervasive this whole thing has gotten in a way that I know I talked about years ago. If Apple had come out on day one and said, all of your stuff is going to always be here and you're going to love it and it's going to be fantastic and make this shift over, it would have seemed difficult and it would have seemed scary. Whether you see this as a good thing or a bad thing, I'm the frog in the pot of water, and the temperature has slowly been going up. Luckily, it's just getting to a comfortable, temperature. I hope. I guess we'll find out. What has surprised me most over the past 15 years, and this is looking at it from a business side, I think, although it's true for me as well, is how much they have upped the price of things and we've been cool with it. I'm not saying that the prices are not worth it, but you look at a phone now that's $750 and you're like, well, okay. The most I ever paid for a watch before my Apple Watch was maybe 50 bucks, maybe 30 bucks for a Timex, $35 for a Mickey Mouse watch years ago, maybe. And now, what is a 44 millimeter Apple Watch, which I don't have, but that would be the next one I would get, is like what, 349, 399, something like that. And we look at that now as a price, and we're like, well, yeah, okay, that seems about right, because that's the price now. What's really fascinating to me as well, the prices of phones have gone up thanks to Apple. Not thanks to Apple, but they've kind of made us okay with the price of a phone being as high as the price of a phone gets. And I know there are more expensive phones out there, but they're not the ones that people are buying en masse. Earbuds, AirPods are like $150, I think, maybe a bit more than that. And when they first came out, that seemed absolutely insane. And yet, that's kind of like what people expect to pay now for those. And then, of course, you want the noise canceling. It's 200 something, and it goes up from there. And but we've been made okay with that. The thing that's really interesting to me is at the same time, the price of the computer has gone down some. So that you end up in some cases with a phone that is as expensive as a computer, which is interesting because, first of all, while the Mac does not seem like a value proposition, at least just when you first look at the sticker, and that's because you can get a Chromebook for 250 or $300. What's really interesting to me is you look at the phone, you look at the Mac, they're about the same price in some cases, and that seems sensible. And in a lot of ways, that does seem sensible because go back to what I was saying just a minute ago about what an amazing productivity tool the iPhone can be. And I don't even use it that much as a productivity tool. To me, that's fascinating. And then 15 years from now, I want my own best friend in my pocket, which sounds dirty, but isn't. Dave and I were talking about the whole ambient computing thing, and I couldn't think of the term, and he never hit on that term, and it took me a long time to remember between that show and this it is. But the idea that everything is just kind of everywhere, and all that stuff is just kind of everywhere. What we talked about afterwards is I want a personality for Apple's virtual assistant. And I think we're going to head towards that at some point. I think machine learning on the phone. So we're not all talking to the same virtual assistant at some point. It's drawing on the same kind of data. It's, drawing on the same kind of power. But if I'm somebody who is, constantly saying please and thank you to my virtual assistant on my phone, is it going to be nicer to me? If I'm somebody who's constantly snarky to my virtual assistant, is it going to be nicer to me? If I'm somebody who treats it like, you would treat talking to a can opener, is it just going to, be Joe Friday, just the facts, ma'am, and that's it? I'm interested in seeing personality emerge from the devices we have. Is it going to happen? I don't know, but that's the whole point of the 15 years from now thing. You just get to say, hey, that'd be neat. That's what I want to see. Or if you want to play, more coloring inside the lines, you can say that's what I think we're going to say. It's entirely up to you. And I know I'm putting that to you again because seriously, I want answers to those questions from you. What has wowed you over the past 15 years from Apple? What has surprised you over the last 15 years from Apple? And what do you want 15 years hence? info@macosken.com. I think that's going to about wrap it up for today because I've got, boy, howdy, so many more shows. Doing the Apple Context Machine with Brian Chaffin this week. We're recording that tonight. Got Shelley Brisbane, got all kinds of stuff. So I think we're going to wrap up for today. Please don't forget, in a few minutes tomorrow morning with Dave Hamilton, Mac OS Ken tomorrow morning with, Ken. Mac OS Ken live tomorrow afternoon with Ken and hopefully you. And I'll talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Again. I saw an ad. I was looking through an old issue of Life magazine. Frank says that he remembers his dad buying a 1967 Chevy Impala Super Sport off the showroom floor for $3,000 plus. I remember seeing an ad for a VW Bug for, I want to say, $800. $800, maybe 1,000. Of course, I was just a young whippersnapper. Actually, I think I wasn't born yet. It was a very old issue of Life magazine. Hang on one second. I need to get back up to the top there and find out what everybody was saying. Wow, lot to talk. It's not sure how many people. Okay, sorry. I liked when Chris Elliott was the science guy. My favorite thing was when they were asking what was the difference between vegetable oil and light vegetable oil, and he had the lab coat, and he had a couple of beakers, and he poured a little bit in each beaker, and he held it up to the light, and then he took the bottle of corn oil or vegetable oil and drank it, and then he put it down. And he picked up the bottle of light vegetable oil and drank it. And then when he was finished, he was like, I can't tell the difference, Dave. That was my favorite Chris Elliott moment. One of them, anyway. Bill says the halves of the show. Yeah, that's why I always correct myself or try to correct myself and say second part. Because, yes, generally speaking, the first half of the show is longer than the second half of the show. The second half of the show, though, was also supposed to include feedback. Yeah, I've still got this thing right here. Second half of the show is also supposed to include feedback, which doesn't happen a lot. So hopefully Friday, Bill. I'm going to ban Eugene. They're not in talks in developing autonomous cars with Apple, but what about other kinds of cars? Get out. Really, you're going to do that to my head? No, I think I know you're kidding. And yes. Still sticking with BMW as the manufacturing partner. Call me crazy. I'm just going to call you Webb. Is that for a car you can buy, Webb, or is that for a fleet of service cars? Frank called Webb crazy. I'm not telling on him. You guys already know that anyway. Gary says he thinks Magna is going to be the company that makes cars for Apple. Okay. Sure. I mean, it would be interesting to see Apple go off by themselves and do that. Remember when we all thought it was going to be Volkswagen? Still could be, I guess. Andrew says he loves his Hyundai cars. The quality would be great. I wish Hyundai would be willing to defer to Apple at least for their car. Apple won't go wrong in terms of how they build their design. Yeah, I know that, who was it? I think it was Peter Cohen that I was talking to a few weeks ago, was really excited about the possibility of Hyundai doing that. Bill says this must be so difficult for Samsung, who is trying to figure out what to do with their Samsung car project. I assume you're kidding. It's hilarious. Yeah, I can't wait to see the car HP makes. Nabil says the iPhone 12 mini is too big for him. See? Why do I say see? Like anybody was arguing with me. I was annoyed by those headlines, but yeah, that's sort of been a theme this week for some reason. Brian makes an interesting point. Personally, I think the 2020 SE cannibalizes the would-be sales of the Mini. Mini is more powerful, but costs much more for the lower price market. Would be a sacrifice. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting, actually, because yeah, they kind of killed the. Well, hmm, 5G is still the thing. Of course, the Mini is a much more powerful phone. I don't think the Mini is priced to be the budget phone. That's why the SE is out there. But yeah, you make an interesting point. See, Nabil says he never bought the SE for the price. He bought it for the size for the first generation. Sorry. Frank says all money is an abstraction. Yeah, that was basically the conversation I had with Brian Chaffin a week and a half ago, or 2.5 weeks ago, however long. Ryan says he thinks the problem with the iPhone 12 mini is that people wanted the price to be even lower than it is. Folks that he asked wanted the price to be like the second gen SE. Yeah, I mean, it does make it a tough compare, right? Yeah. I was going to explain to you what you obviously already know, so I'm not going to do that because, like the dad from the Brady Bunch. Hmm. It's interesting. Nabil says he thinks he knows why the birthday thing is happening because it's multiple instances of what did you say? Multiple instances of the same contact that are linked into one contact. I was messaging a friend of mine yesterday, and it turns out she's just upgraded her phone or just upgraded her web or something. She changed something on her phone. So I wrote to the message that I used to write to her on, and then after about 30 minutes, I hadn't heard anything. And so I went and checked to make sure I had the information right. And I found another chat that we had been having at another point. And so I messaged that one. And then she messaged me back on the first one. And I was like, right, which one of these is right for you? And she wrote back on the second one saying, I don't even know which one I'm talking to you on now. So she's actually done something on her side, it seems, that has now messed up what my contacts for her are. Ironically, I don't even think I know when her birthday is in my phone. But yeah, I get what you're saying. That is kind of that's kind of a pain. And I use pain in the loosest sense of that term because all the information is still there. It's just not quite as nice and neat as you would want it to be. I mean, the fact that you have it 9 times kind of stinks, but better to have it 9 times than not even have it one, maybe. I don't know. Sorry, I'm reading all the stuff that people are saying here about how you might be able to fix the multiple contacts thing. I had something really weird happen recently. I signed up for I logged into Signal because a friend of mine who it doesn't use iPhone, so he doesn't have access to messages, decided to get off of WhatsApp because of all the stuff that Facebook is pulling. And so I went ahead and logged into Signal, and Signal said, "Hey, this person is on Signal." And it's a person whose phone number I used to have, but don't anymore. And yet somehow it was able to link us together. That kind of freaked me out. I assume it's something buried someplace. Maybe it's an email. I don't know because it is somebody I have emailed over the past few years, but I don't know. Can you get Scarlett Johansson as the personality for your personal assistant? Remember, she ended up being flaky in that movie, John. If you can get her voice, yeah, but she took off, as did all the personal assistants in that movie, I believe. Spoiler alert, movie's been out for like 12 years, so sorry. Frank Petrie wants Diana Rigg. John's making fun of Frank, so I'm glad you guys are having fun. I don't know how old you think I am, Nabil. Here's how old I am, though. I've totally forgotten what you're referring to in that comment. So there you go. Matthew says he doesn't think it'll be VW who will make the Apple car because of their pollution scandal. Apple is too eco. Hey, if you wanna rehabilitate VW, though, Apple, the eco company, partnering with them as a way to do it. Eugene says, but if Volkswagen does an EV, they won't have to jigger the emissions data to get it on the road. Although you do have to wonder why you have to keep putting diesel in it. I love that idea. I have this electric vehicle that, it needs diesel for the lights. That's what VW says, but they're on the up and up now. That's wrong. Matthew, that would be WhatsApp. That wouldn't be Signal, right? Matthew saying it may have the telephone number because if they use Facebook and it's public or was public at one time and you had it synchronizes, that would be a WhatsApp thing, I would think, not a Signal thing, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying. Oh, okay. Yeah, mentioning the Beetle being sold for very little. Yeah, no. It was an old episode of Life. I used to buy old magazines at junk stores and yard sales for collages and stuff like that. So I think it was like a 1968 thing of Life magazine, which used to be a magazine. I don't know if it still is or not. Neat. I like that, Nabil. Let's go with that. I am more than 10 years older than you. I'm 50. So there. And now you all must take that information and forget it. Speaking of taking and going, I need to turn this around because I got 2 more shows coming up in the next 2 hours. I have to go prepare. Plus macOS can, but that's tomorrow. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Listen, I'm not kidding. What has wowed you? What has surprised you? And talk to me about 15 years from now. I would love to get those answers because I really enjoy the conversations that we have here afterwards. And I would love to bring the kind of thoughts that you have to the show for Friday. And then maybe you'll give me some other good ideas and I'll just, keep building a show off this one. So write to me, please. No later than Thursday so I can have it for Friday's show. And I'll remind you again tomorrow and the day after. Take care, everybody.